Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, Honorable Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs, Government of India. Shri Saket Dalmia ji, President PhD Chamber. Shri Hemant Jain, Vice President PhD Chamber. Shri Pradeep Multani, immediate former President PhD Chamber. Our distinguished former presidents present here, chairs and co-chairs of the expert committees, managing committee members, my colleague Dr. S.P. Sharma, Chief Economist PhD Chamber, eminent dignitaries and guests, friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen. A very good afternoon to each one of you. On behalf of the PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I welcome you all to today's post-budget discussion on the Union Budget 2022-23. We are indeed honored and privileged to have amongst us Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, the Honorable Union Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs, for addressing us today and demystifying the post-budget session. I also extend a very warm welcome to our senior government officials from the Ministry of Finance for attending today's interaction with Madam Finance Minister. Budget 23-24, as you are all aware, is a budget for the great build-up on the Indian economy with a state-of-the-art infrastructure, strengthening aggregate demand through capital investments, strong base of startups, ease of doing business, youth empowerment, green growth, and rationalization of taxes. The long-term vision of the budget is to build a strong India during the Amrit Kal with a developed economy by 2047. With these words, I now request all to stand up for the national anthem.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल गंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाये तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगल जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I would like to request our President, Shri Saket Dalmia ji, to kindly welcome and give the Honorable Chief Guest, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, our Honorable Finance Minister today, with a plant and a shawl. May I now request our President to kindly give the formal presidential address.
Thank you, SG Saab. A warm, going to be warm soon afternoon to everybody. Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, our Honorable Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs, Government of India. Shri Hemant Jain ji, our Vice President PhD Chamber, RSG, Saurabh ji, our Chief Economist SP Sharma ji, our several former presidents who are here with us today. Thank you so much. Our management committee members, eminent dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to all of you. We are indeed very delighted to have the Honorable Finance Minister with us to grace the occasion of PhD's post-budget session this year. Respected Madam, we congratulate you for providing us a demand-creating, investment-inducing, and growth-oriented Union Budget 22-23, 2023-24. Thank you so much, ma'am. Respected ma'am, increasing the government spend by 33% to 10 lakh crores with a special focus on infrastructure will go a long way in boosting demand in the economy and have a massive immediate and long-term impact in improving efficiency, productivity, and growth across the board. This really takes into account the short-term needs of the economy as well as the long-term vision to make India a developed nation by 2047. Ma'am, one of the biggest asks by the chamber has been to give more in the hands of the taxpayer and middle class consumer so that they are able to spend more in the economy. We thank you for increasing the minimum limit. Furthermore, with an ever increasing upwardly mobile class, the move to reduce the highest effective tax rate is commendable, ma'am, and an excellent signal to the new India that the government is appreciative for India to grow to be the third largest economy in the world. The new group of wealthy are going to increase, obviously. It's a great signal to them that it's okay to earn and the government does not consider it as a sin so as to tax them exorbitantly. Thank you, ma'am, for that signal. Respected ma'am, we must acknowledge that the current government has been most interactive and consultative across all industries, I think, in the rememberable past. What is heartening is to see the impact of this spread across your budget, ma'am, as it addresses issues across industries and is deep-rooted and filled with long-term oriented measures. For example, agri storage capacity. We all know it will be built, but it will not come to use overnight. The focus on research and development, AI, skilling, with the likes of 157 new nursing colleges and teachers being retrained, being a few examples. We feel this will have a massive long-term positive impact on the economy. Furthermore, ma'am, excellent ease of doing business initiatives like reduction in criminalization laws. That was one of the largest asks by the industry. And I think last year when you addressed our members, one of your key pain points was that why isn't the industry investing back into the economy? And what we found was that the framework in terms of laws, as it becomes simpler, people are more willing to invest. So I think this will go a long way and also give the right direction and right feeling to the people to invest back. One of our other important aspects was, ma'am, to help the MSME sector. Thank you for unlocking potentially 2 lakh crores, which is to the MSME sector, which is starving for growth capital post-pandemic. And most importantly, ma'am, thank you for sowing the seeds for leaving a better world for our next generation by focusing on youth and green initiatives. With these words, I would like to invite our respected ma'am to address our members and perhaps share some insights on the challenges she faced while choosing one good cause over the other, and also guide us as to how we can be a catalyst in her efforts to grow our economy. Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon and namaskar. To all the office bearers of the PhD Chamber of Commerce and also all the past presidents, as you would call, or office bearers and the heads of PhD Chamber of Commerce, those who've taken time out to come here. I'm indeed grateful that your time is being spent with us today. And for all those invitees and members of the chamber, a very good afternoon and thank you very much for inviting me here today to talk to you all. I think a very crisp introduction has already been given about the budget as to the focus areas and also the emphasis which is being laid. There's not much that I can repeat. But one word struck me, even as the budget is being introduced. Unravel the mystery of the budget? Demystify, yeah, demystify the budget. I thought I could take that little one credit for making the budget simple, so that as it is read, you will be able to understand what is there. I've not really, I thought, I've not really woven a mystery giving budget. And so demystifying, no, the intention in the last few years, if I can start with that, is the budget should be simple enough when read for everyone to understand and for everyone to pick on that one which is of more importance for her or him. And in a way, I felt in this budget, also for being concise, in that I read only 87 minutes and not 2.5 hours. So making it concise, making it precise, and making it clear and simple was one thing which I thought I would probably put across to you, saying it is one of the features of the budget. But when I was asked to demystify, no, that is not a claim I can make now. So no, it's okay. So that's not a claim I can now make. So I'll have to try more then. So, but the idea is that it was very clearly a guidance which I had received from the Prime Minister, that the momentum on growth should not be relaxed or diluted. If anything, there should be greater accent for that growth which we want to sustain at a good level, and also ensure that public expenditure will continue and at a higher level, so that we are able to keep anchoring on multiplier effect. And that is why the root of the public expenditure for capital infrastructure building programs, like the last year's budget, like the previous year's budget. So consistently for the last 3-4 years, the emphasis is being given for public capital expenditure. So we've kept that up. And how? 30% last year, 30% this year, increase, actual increase. And for the first time, I suppose, in so many years, have we reached a double-digit amount going for capital expenditure. So that clearly can be said as a real focus of this budget. And also because with capital expenditure, you're able to have the multiplier, it has a spread, it touches core industries, you're able to ensure that the money goes to the right places and so on. But even with that done, inclusion, make sure those who are really in that league of the population who still need a lot of hand-holding, we will continue with the free food program this whole year, just so nobody's left without food in the family. And with inclusion also somewhat taken care of, MSME had to receive the major focus, because they are the ones who are actually being the backbone of the Indian economy, and also institute job creators. For one large unit being located in any one place because of various different scales of advantage that they can have, and MSME is spread all over the country, and wherever they are, they create local employment. So MSMEs have all been always in our mind since 2020, when the pandemic hit us. And every year, each year after that, we have ensured that we give fiscal support as well as ease of doing business. And we're also working together with the states and with the third tier, which is the panchayat or the ward level administrations, to make sure that MSME priorities are kept on the top of the agenda. A festering problem for the MSME has been payments don't reach them in time. Big industries, whether they are public sector or private, delay payments beyond 45 days. And therefore, this budget addresses that as well, because we've always been nudging industries, inclusive of public sector undertakings, nudging them to say, please do not delay payments which are due beyond the 45-day reasonable limit. And over and above the nudging, we've now come to say that you can't, those who have dues to pay for the MSMEs can't really take advantage of set-offs in that financial year. The year in which you actually pay them is the year in which you can actually claim set-offs. So MSME from various different angles have been given priority, and the accelerator fund, which is also being created, will also help the MSMEs. So capital expenditure, inclusion, MSME, and looking at various sectors which need to have the advantage of the size that they have. Women empowerment, because the SHG groups in the villages are actually into a lot of critical activity. Today, and also in the earlier budgets, we have given provision for SHG women's groups, who are more than 81 lakh groups in the country, for them to have greater access of resources, professional assistance, linkage with markets, and if they are in service sectors, so be it, for them to carry on with activities. Branding and market finding are also getting added to their portfolio. With that, we expect that a women true empowerment will happen for them to be able to scale up into very professionally run, profit earning, government supported women's groups. So that emphasis is being given for empowering women in the rural areas. Again, on the skilling, there's not one but several items that we've brought into the skilling area, particularly looking at Industry 4.0, which will have a direct bearing on members of the chamber seated here. Because today, if you're moving from one level of technology to a higher level of technology, because today artificial intelligence is going to play a big role, and you can benefit by using technology and advancement in technology for your business. Most often I've heard people tell us that yes, we are investing more to upgrade our technological components in your activity. We face the situation of people with appropriate skill sets not being available. Are they technically competent? The people who are applying for the jobs? Maybe not. And therefore, that is an issue which we often hear from industry. So in order to have people be trained in technology appropriate skills, so that they can look at industries which are moving fast towards Industry 4.0, the kind of skill sets that they need will be promoted, will be actively brought in, and therefore the next generation employees will be readied this year, and that they will be available for those industries which want that level of skilled manpower to get them in time. So if that is one focused area of technology-driven skill upgradation, there are also skill upgradation programs in this budget for other levels of skilling which is so required. And there is that one section of India which still thinks that there's so much of demand for their skills abroad, but they fall short because they don't have the necessary training which is so required in the concerned language or in the concerned awareness about that country's socio-economic requirements. So for instance, there's always this demand for chartered accountants abroad, nurses abroad, physiotherapists abroad, and also for services in aggregation abroad, for aggregation of very many different things. One big handicap Indian workers find, professionals find, as opposed to those going from Philippines or Thailand or any such country, is they are language competent, whereas ours is not. So we are trying to bring in training for our youth for international job markets. So even that's been provided in this budget. Overall, if these are being attended from the human side, we are also trying to bring in various levels of moving forward in agriculture. You heard that we'll want to have the farmers look at becoming also those who produce electricity, use solar panels in your fields, also use it for yourself, and if you have surplus, sell it, and we take it through the grid. Such enabling provisions are being made for not just agriculture, people in agriculture, but also for farmers who are simultaneously engaging in dairying, fishing activities. We're also supporting people who are setting up, along with the farmers, piggeries or growing any other animal which they would eventually want to sell in the market. So we've actually pared down on segments which normally get covered under a larger umbrella, but get left out because they're a minute segment of the larger category. So we've gone down to the extent of saying for them, under each of the silos which get covered otherwise under a larger umbrella. The emphasis through the PLI continue. The sunrise sectors are being given the same importance as we've given it last year as well. That is to encourage the China +1 and now the Europe +1 as well. Renewable energy commitments to the commitments made in Scotland, and therefore committing ourselves to fulfill those nationally determined goals are also finding place in this budget. The states have to be a part of this capital expenditure, and therefore the last year's amount, which was 1 lakh crore, which is given to the states as per a formula given by the Finance Commission for tax devolution, that's used here as well. That devolution of the 50-year interest-free loan for capital expenditure also gets covered this year, but this time it is not 1 lakh crore, it's 1,30,000 crores for the states, wherein about 80% grow of it, 85% of it would 80% of it would go for the states without any conditions attached, but 20% other will go with different layers of conditions of reforms attached. We want to gently nudge states to carry on with some reforms which they had undertaken earlier, whether it is the power sector, whether it is the one nation, one ration card, and so on. Also looking at panchayats planning for municipal bonds. So these are getting added in the rest of the 20% as conditions that you get that so long as you do this and so on. So states are also being brought together to carry forward the capital expenditure because there's a great appetite in states. I can go on with every paragraph of the budget, but largely looking at sustaining growth through capital expenditure, not forgetting inclusion, not forgetting the necessity to keep our youth ready for job markets, but all this with fiscal consolidation. That fiscal consolidation for which we had given a roadmap, we are completely aligning ourselves with it. So if anything, I must credit the entire ministry for ensuring that we were able to give a budget which is fiscally responsible, but very clear on the target, that is growth has to be given the momentum. So that's how I can summarize the budget. I'm sure all of you have read it so many times, carved out paragraphs on which you can question the government. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Finance Minister. With your permission, we would, the distinguished audience is sitting here for asking some questions. We have your permission, ma'am? Right. So I will request our former President, Shri Ashok Kajaria ji, for the first question. Please, Mike.
Ma'am Finance Minister, first of all, very growth-oriented budget, an excellent job done. I am part of the tile and sanitary ware industry. Tile industry currently in India is about $6.5 billion. Sanitary ware is about $1.5 billion. We use natural gas as one of the key inputs in our manufacturing. Right now, natural gas is not part of GST, but the taxation component is very high. Just to give you 3 states where we are working, Rajasthan is close to about 30%. UP is 25% and Andhra is 24.5%. My request last year was, and also this year, that can natural gas be brought in the GST? Thank you.
Would you like to take all the answers in the end, ma'am, or would you like to respond? Right. Thank you, ma'am. So the second question is coming from Mrs. Sonali Jain, our co-chair of the Education Committee. Mrs. Sonali Jain, please.
I'm getting this platform to speak to you. So first and foremost, I would like to quote Sanskrit shlok, Yatra naryastu pujyante, ramante tatra devta. So where the women are the divinity blossoms wherever the women are worshipped. And India's Amrit Kal has truly begun because we have with us a lady who has broken all glass ceilings by becoming the finance minister right now and a prior defense minister. Please, ma'am, accept all our accolades, applause, and appreciation for being the women finance minister. You really aspire us to inspire. Coming back to my question, I'm Sonali Jain, and I'm at PhD Chambers as a
Co-chair of the
co-chair
Education
of the
Committee.
education committee. It sometimes happens, it's overwhelming presence of yours probably. So, ma'am, thank you so much for a very sustainable, very a budget which is very forward-looking and progressive, and especially because it emphasizes so much on digitization as well as upskilling. So, ma'am, with the coming of technologies like Chat GPT, Metaverse, AR, VR, we are seeing that the whole education system is being revolutionized. And this is basically harnessed by a lot of edtech companies, especially the private players. So, ma'am, where do you see the edtech companies and the private players in education in the roadmap of this union budget? As well as with the advent of these technologies, we have very non-orthodox educational tools like computers, laptop, tablets, TV. And all of these have to be made accessible to the students these days for us to grow as an economy, as a country. And the GST on these are quite high right now. I believe it is 28% for all of these tools and 12% for 18% for educational institutions, for edtech companies. So, ma'am, how can we lower or bring it about to some extent that even a common man can get access, a common student can get access to all of these technologies? Thank you, ma'am.
So can I continue with the third question, ma'am? If you permit, or would you like to respond? Right. So may I request Mr. Hemant Jain, our Vice President, PhD CCI, to ask his question.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving us the common man budget, which we don't need to demystify, as you had said. So I think a lot of reforms have happened in budget over the last many years. But one sector, which is petroleum sector, which the GST is still not part, the petroleum products are still not part of the GST. Is there any roadmap for the government to bring petroleum also into the GST roadmap? Because I think as a country, we have advantage in labor, we have advantage in the skill sets what people have, but power and cost of power is something which we need to address. Thank you.
So we carry on with the questions. Now we'll have another young lady, Mrs. Pallavi Dinodia, co-chair of the Direct Taxes Committee. Ma'am, can I have your question, please?
Ma'am, thank you for a great budget and for inspiring all of us young women. I'm a chartered accountant by profession, so thank you for inspiring all of us, to take this forward. Ma'am, my question is that, the government has done so much for decriminalization. You have 3,500 laws that are decriminalized, 39,000 simplified procedures, and 1,500 old laws that are repealed. Ma'am, for independent directors, for corporate governance especially, you're held guilty till proved otherwise. While our courts have held that independent directors, are not in day-to-day practice and therefore not guilty, unfortunately, our laws, with officers in default, consider all of us with the same brush. So if something can be done on that, ma'am. Thank you.
The next question.
I'm quite okay if you want to go ahead with the next question. GST, gas, petroleum. The provision is already available for petroleum and natural gas, petroleum products to be brought into the GST. My predecessor had already made the window kept open. Once the states agree, we will have the petroleum products also be covered by the GST. So that's not so much us not wanting it. It's the entire council saying yes. And saying yes, not just yes, because it's already in there. What they have to do is to determine a rate. And once they tell me the rate, we get it into the GST. Independent directors, ma'am, chartered accountant Pallavi, am I right? I really can't get the crux of your question because independent directors on board will have to do their job. If you can hold me guilty, I'm not able to find those who are ready to be on boards, particularly women. In spite of my trying, yes, I have quite a few organizations, even in the public sector, which don't have enough number of directors in the place where there is a vacancy, more so women in place where there is a vacancy, and they end up even paying fines because they don't have women directors. And this is my constant cry. The very same set of people who ask me this question, when approached, don't want to be on a board. We'll get there. EdTech. I think the last budget announced digital university. This budget also has announced AI in 3 centers of excellence on digital and also making it available and to keep abreast of anything that is required in AI, not to be behind the curve, but also push ahead with the good advantage that India has in terms of technology. From the government, there is no hesitation. We are pushing ahead. And we see it as a very important and a very big component of future education. And that is why I think because there could be a gap in terms of rural India not being able to afford for each student a tablet. We had announced that if you're missing classes, you can even use 200 dedicated channels in the Doordarshan bouquet, which will be in each language according to the state in which they're using it, available to teach for each class, each subject. So we are committed and dedicated to the cause of digitizing education, in the sense using digital tool for education. That will continue.
Can I proceed, ma'am? Thank you. So our next question is coming from Shri Rajiv Talwar, our former president, PhD CCI.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Under the leadership of the Prime Minister and under your stewardship, I think we've crossed one of the greatest hurdles that we faced ever in our independent India, which is the pandemic. Today, we are at crossroads where we do believe that the independent, not directors, but independent entrepreneurs in this country do not blink at the thought of a 5, 10, $20 trillion economy. My question to you is about the housing for the poor, which will also cover education, that we feel that in cities, 50% of the people live in slums or unauthorized colonies. Therefore, we need to make by 2047 about 8 crore of the smallest homes of 300 square feet, which will be a huge investment and possibly the largest program. We have a blueprint for that. We've given it as a question and a paper to you to be handed over by the president. It will get even on 100 rupees, ma'am. First of all, it will make manufacturing in India and Atmanirbharta totally within our realm. All industries will get a fillip. Secondly, huge amount of employment to make 8 crore homes in cities of India. We feel that this is the right moment where 292,000 crores annually can be collected as rent for as small a rent as 100 rupees a day. We feel that with your achievements in the past, whether it is GST collections rising, faceless, or the corporate tax which you lowered in 2019, you won the sobriquet of being not only the first woman finance minister, but possibly the best finance minister which the country's had. And if one can dare to say and dream, if Mr. Bernard Bernanke could get a Nobel Prize for something which happened in 2008. We feel that India, being the third largest economy or the most progressive economy at the moment, the fastest growing, we don't see any reason why you and your team should not be nominated for the same Nobel Prize.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is coming from Shri K.S. Mehta, our former president, who would like to ask a question.
Madam Finance Minister, your opening remarks mentioned that you have looked at maintaining the momentum of growth. In that regard, I would like to mention 2 points. One, we can have growth by higher investment as you have done. So at the same time, the PhD chamber research shows that almost about 60% of the SMEM units have been doing well, but 40% can do much better, provided we have 2 facilities available. You have announced a credit guarantee scheme which pulled us through the COVID period, and you have again announced, Madam Finance Minister, if margin money for 20% out of that 40% could be made available. They have good management, but they have shortage of finance. And that finance will not come unless the margin money is put in, which can be done through this guaranteed fund. That will lead to substantial employment and minimum cost, incremental cost. Secondly, Madam, the Section 79, where you have allowed the new startups for their loss to be carried forward, even if there is a change in shareholding. My humble submission is, please throw it open. Section 79 now, after the wonderful performance of GST, it is actually the wonderful performance of GST which has also led to an increase in direct taxes. You are aware of what I'm mentioning. Section 79 now has no need in the economy, and units will turn around much faster if they are combined with other units. Thank you.
So the next question is coming from Mr. Mukesh Bagaria, our chair of the Textile Committee. Is Mr. Mukesh here? Okay, so we'll go to the next question. Okay, please introduce yourself.
Only ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for the interaction. Only in textile. Now the textile India is progressing. We need man-made fiber in India. The things is that there are cotton, there is a viscose and the man-made fiber. They are all complementary fibers. Cotton is, not available much. So man-made is there, but we have the inverted duty structures, right from PTA, MEG to filament, 18%, 12%. We don't want that you should increase the duty on this fabric, but you can make one GST rate from PTA, MEG, fiber and filament only, so that unnecessary, what are the calculations are there? We are blocking our capital. So unnecessary is there. Government, first we are paying to the government, then it is refunded. So this is only one thing. And we are short of PTA, MEG raw material in India. So we want some custom duty to be released because 5% to 2.5%. You can increase the custom duty on the downstream product where import is there. So by this, the export will increase and the domestic consumption will increase. Thank you, ma'am.
So we have another former president, Dr. Ashok Khanna ji, who is very keen to ask a question, though partly it has been answered by the Honorable FM.
Ma'am, I had asked this request, you made a request to you 3 years before, but that was through a virtual platform. Today I have come physically to reiterate this question. Partly the young lady has already put my point forward, that is about independent directors. I think one of the things, if you may permit me, the solution would be to let it go through the law ministry, because otherwise the judges, particularly the lower courts, they don't bother who's independent director. They have to file, one has to file the appeals and they still don't understand. So I think it will be most appropriate, you as the corporate and affairs minister, as well as the finance minister, if you can pass some kind of law under your leadership, so that one can, the independent directors, you already said that nobody wants to become independent directors. The situation is even worse because people who have resigned from these companies, they're also being haunted. I don't want to say anything more because you understand the subject. Please do something, and they are not being harassed. Even senior citizens are being harassed, and they are made to sit and not even sit, stand up before the lower court judges. And it's very humiliating for some of the top people of the country being called to courts. Thank you, madam.
Madam, with your permission, last question, because we know that you are running short of time. So our immediate former president wanted to ask a question.
Madam, firstly, of course, an outstanding budget in all ways. This is the first time we are finding that the country is talking about, we are already the 5th biggest economy. We're looking at becoming the 3rd biggest economy. And it's very important that the states also talk that language. That we look at Honorable Yogi Adityanath ji saying, I want to make UPI USD 1 trillion economy. I think these sort of things which are coming out simply outstanding. Madam, you had reduced the corporate tax to 15% plus surcharge a few years ago if one set up new manufacturing units. The thing is, 2.5 years have already gone due to that COVID. And also now the Ukraine war is there. So people were very hesitant to come forward. I think if you could extend that by another 3 years or 4 years or 5 years from beyond 31st March 2024, I think that would be a really blessing. And 100% we will be the 3rd biggest economy very shortly. Thank you, madam.
One more question, ma'am, with your permission. Former President, Mr. D.K. Agarwal would like to ask a question.
Good evening, ma'am. I'll not talk about the budget because we all know that this was the excellent budget. Ma'am, when you reduce the corporate tax, India became the most favored destination. But if you look at India, we are a basically MSME sector economy. That is the backbone of our country. 30% of the GDP is being contributed by the MSME sector. But the taxation rate of MSME is still the same. It has not reduced in line with the corporate tax. The logic advanced is that when the drawings are made, are given to the partners, that is not taxable. But ma'am, what I suggest, whatever is the retained profit, that is taxed at the lower rate, like the corporate tax. And whatever is the distributed profit, that is taxed at the rate which is the present rate. If you can do that, at least we will be at par with the corporates, because most of the MSME units are either in LLP or in partnership or in sole proprietorship. Thank you, ma'am.
I'm no preamble and no wasting time. I have only 2 suggestions. First is that there are a lot of contradictions between the company law and the listing requirements of the stock exchanges in SEBI. If you want, I can just give you one example, which is company law says you can replace a director within 90 days of his retirement or resigning. But stock exchanges say that if the balance of the board is disturbed, even for a day, it is a default. So there are many such contradictions between company law and the LODR or the listing requirements. And 2 is, as you mentioned about MSME ease of doing business, if SEBI could look at a different set of compliance and LODRs for MSME compared to the large corporates. Thank you, ma'am.
Another quick question, ma'am, from yet another former president, Sri Anil Khaitan. Last question, please.
Ma'am was just suggesting if medium enterprises could also be considered in the 45 days payment clause.
It was really quick, sir. Thank you.
On the housing and rental, PM Awas Yojana Urban actually gives affordable housing even for the urban areas. And during the Atmanirbhar Bharat, I had announced also provisions for building rental accommodation. That's caught on in very many cities, and we are closely following that as well. So anyone who wants to participate in that, you're welcome. We can see where the existing provisions can also be extended. But I thought we kept both public and private in mind about affordable rental accommodations. Private was not excluded, so that much I can confirm. Many of them were suggestions, so I don't think I want to respond to it. You need to do this tweaking in this particular act or that particular rule. I'll take it all on board. There was one interesting suggestions. Can you make states also talk similarly? The way in which we are giving emphasis for capital expenditure and so on. I'm not sure one of you all said. Yes, to make states talk, it is the industry who is located in that state which should make it a point to talk with them, saying if there is one central government which is willing to hear us and also respond, can state also please do it? Rather than us telling, look, we are doing it, will you also follow it? The first thing would be, this is really not federalism, leave it to us. So it's not for us. I should actually request each one of you, please go to your states and say, as much as the center is responsible, can you also be responsive, listen to us, do things as per our requirements. If I ask for 10, at least do 2. So it's easier done that way rather than the government of India talking to states saying, even if it's in the welfare of the states, it will not be received in the same spirit. I'm sort of finding no words but to tell Mr. Agarwal, treating corporates equal to LLPs is a much discussed, thrashed out subject. My answer has not changed. Company law and SEBI being in contradiction with one another. When we were trying to do some amendments in the company law, there was a lot of interaction with the industry. If this point has been missed out, I'll quite welcome from you a note and we can always take it up. On textile inversion, I better not talk. I think I've addressed most of it then. The others can be treated as suggestion and you are welcome to write to me. We'll take it
We are
up
running short of
the
time,
moment we get it.
gentlemen. Please. Please. So it is already covered and you can send it to the PhD chamber. We'll forward it to Madam Honorable Finance Minister. There's no problem. We'll bring it to her notice. May I now request the Honorable, with the permission of the Honorable Finance Minister, that we have compiled a research analysis on the budget. Ma'am, I'll request you to kindly release that report. It's an in-house report which has been made by a research bureau, and it's in a very, very short and a concise manner. Thank you. With this, we come to the end of the session. May I now request our Vice President to kindly give the concluding remarks and the vote of thanks.
Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, Honorable Finance Minister and Corporate Affairs Minister, Government of India. Shri Saket Dalmia ji, President PhD Chambers. All our former presidents, I have never seen so many of them here, so thank you for coming. Colonel Saurabh Sanyal ji, Secretary General PhD Chambers. Dr. S.P. Sharma, Chief Economist, PhD Chambers. Eminent dignitaries, friends from media, and ladies and gentlemen. A very, very good evening to all of you. It is my proud privilege to propose a hearty vote of thanks to Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, Honorable Finance Minister, Government of India. Madam, we are indeed honored and privileged to have you for the post-budget deliberation. I also thank all the esteemed government officers for gracing today's session. It is indeed encouraging that in the 75th year of independence, the world has recognized the Indian economy as a bright star. With its economic growth estimated at 7%, which is the highest among all developed nations. The Union Budget 2023-24 has focused on ramping on investments and job creations. The budget this year promises to bring a bright future for India. The government has to commendable job on the increased acceleration and containment of fiscal deficit. It is commendable that the budget aims at encouraging the private sector in the economy to invest in productive capacities, thereby creating jobs and pushing growth. The setting up of Agri Fund to encourage agri startups in rural areas is a step towards promoting agriculture and self-sustenance. The rationalization of income tax, particularly for salary class, will enhance disposable income and further boost the consumption in the country. Beside these, a lot of dynamic announcements have been made in the Union Budget. As mentioned by the President in his speech, the budget is demand-sustaining, investment-inducing, and growth-oriented. The increase in capital expenditure by 33% will have a positive impact on the Indian industry and create employment opportunities. The chambers will be submitting a detailed post-budget memorandum incorporating all suggestions, which I'm sure will be given considered view. Madam, I would also like to take a minute of yours. Our chamber was formed in 1905. We are one of the oldest chambers in the country. 70% of our members are from MSME sector. A lot of times, when we go through the budget, we have to demystify it. Thank you for giving us a non-demystified budget, which a common man can understand and appreciate. Thank you for giving us simple budget, ma'am. This is really, all of us were here in the same hall, listening to you, and all our chapters across states were also listening to you, and all of them said, were in unison, that they didn't need to go to a chartered accountant to understand what the budget meant. Thank you for that. So you had emphasized